mythical in the book. But it seems to me now we have this an entire array of possibilities. That is, women can now take up arms and defend their homes. They can also rescue. They can rescue their children. They can defend their children. Now, of course, not all of them can, but it just seems to me that instead of shrinking things down to a single model, where we now have a much more expansive vision of the possibilities for heroism for women, but also for men. And if you think about it, actually, Dara, you can probably tell us about films in which men become caring, compassionate, empathetic, where I think if someone told me the story of, I'll mention that now medals are being given out, not because you've killed 50 people in a village, but because you rescued the soldiers who were fighting with you. So there's a complete shift in mentality. And as I say, this kind of opening up of different possibilities for men and for women.
I think this is absolutely a time for warriors. I mean, this is a time for the warrior archetype. All these are big battles, and it's calling on us to stand and fight. And I will answer your question just real quickly, but because it's something I've actually written quite a bit about. The film Casablanca, which has become sort of a prototype for a lot of the male characters that have followed, the Pacinos, De Niro's, all of those characters. And if you look at it, they are all the older, more disillusioned, kind of tragic male character who is trying to make some meaning and put some value into his life. And so I think that that's a pattern that we are really seeing, that there is a struggle, a male struggle, but also a struggle of the masculine for the feminine, to make something whole and meaningful of their life. And as I said, we are seeing that as a pattern in a lot of storytelling, with the cops who've seen it all, done it all, the soldiers, all of these who are struggling to find their way home, struggling to get to a place of meaning. And so anyway, so I that's partially how I would answer the question. But I also would love to talk to the panel, see if because your book made me think a lot about the whole the time of the warrior in general, especially in terms of what we're seeing in the culture right now, and what we've seen in the last few days with shooting down of Roe v. Wade. So I'd like to add something to the conversation, for which I may be shot down, I don't know. But I remember when Hillary Clinton lost the election, and prior to the election itself, I remember hearing a lot of young women saying things like, "Oh, I don't know, she's kind of like she's just part of the whole structure thing, and there was something that just wasn't enough." And it was like, I took it very personally. I found it very offensive, because she and we in our generation, we were in the front line fighting for all that we had, And I felt that there was not just with young women, but young people in general, who had no sense of what we had been fighting for. And I remember the day after the election saying, "We were handing the world to you on a silver platter." And you said, "Thank you, no." I mean, really? And so if you look at, we in the present are creating story as we go. And if you look at this in terms of story, we are in a process of transformation. And transformation isn't just getting to new consciousness. It's standing and fighting for it. And while the far right has been building an army and waging war, we've just been saying, oh, it's over. We've already won these victories and so on. And I don't think anything is ever won. I think we do have to stand and fight for it. And it tells me that we are in a period where we have to sort of truly embody and live what we are fighting for. And it cannot be a passive, yeah, I mean, I'm sure I'm probably speaking to the choir here, but I was thinking about how we approach this, and this is kind of where I would like to see if anyone has any comments. How do we take on the warrior within us right now to fight this? I mean, yes, we can get out and march. Yes, we can write letters to the editors and so on. But it seems like our thinking in general has to take a shift and realize that, liberation is not a gift. Nobody's going to give it to us. It is what we fight for on every level of our existence. We fought to be liberated from our parents. We fight for equality in our marriages and other relationships and so on. So, so then the question, so for me, the question was, how do we live this? Will just held up a sign about being vigilant. What does that look like? And it can be anything from prayers and meditation to forming groups. I don't know, but it sure seems like we cannot take this for granted and be passive anymore. And it's calling, especially because it's affecting women, it's calling on our warrior selves to really stand and fight. That doesn't exclude men, but I mean, it feels very important.
Well, I wonder if I might speak up. I'm beginning to identify with Dennis as a child, waiting to talk here. And
I wanted to hear you on a Romney.
This was so rich. It's so rich. Thank you for what you just said. And I wanted to respond first to how much I appreciated all your literary sources, Maria, and how books like Pat Barker's book and others have been, for me, just riveting. And I'm of a certain age. I actually was in knew Hillary in college and was in her class in college. So I go back a bit, and she was just a couple years ago at our 50th reunion, believe it or not. So anyway, I had a few responses here. I wanted to mention how Campbell, who's a great teacher, great lecturer, teacher, I'm sure many of you have heard him, and but he it's so interesting that he did the feminine thing. He didn't finish his degree, as men were supposed to do. He went off and read and incubated something and wrote, and then went out into the world. So he embraced a kind of feminine pattern and then wrote about these heroes. And I also want to mention the woman warrior. He helped to bring Heinrich Zimmer's work. Zimmer died very young and was a brilliant Indologist. And he led me to Philosophies of India that Zimmer wrote, Campbell did. And there's a fabulous, I went to Mahabalipuram to see a frieze, which is Durga slaying the buffalo demon. And it is one of the most, I can't pull it up on my computer quickly, but it's one of the most beautiful friezes you can imagine. And here, this buffalo demon is like the masculine, trampling over everything, indiscriminately, bullying everybody. And nobody can get the better of this demon. And this is thousands of years ago. They're struggling with the same thing. And Durga comes along and everybody helps her. And you see the buffalo demon's like this because he knows he's met his, not his match, but his better. So there are those models. I want to bring up a different kind of hero. My mentor, one of my mentors, Joseph Henderson, wrote about the initiated hero. He had a critique of Campbell, that the simple hero is still full of himself. And this is a very American thing. We're a young country, and we're still way too full of ourselves. And I think, and this kind of hero myth, and the initiated hero has had a failure and must call on something larger than him or herself, something beyond, in order to go on. And I think that's a very important, a real contribution. And Henderson was an introverted, very wise person, and wasn't somebody who went around promoting himself. He just was who he was in a very essential way. So he hasn't become so well known for that. But finally, I think that what we're seeing here is the profound envy and fear of the feminine in our country. We're a country of pioneers, cowboys, the masculine subordination of women because you're out in the frontier, and the guys have to protect the women, and which of course the women were working like hell, doing all kinds of work, and making things happen. But think about it. If a woman has an abortion, if the man wants some say on it, like this could be his child, but it's her body. And men cannot have babies. They can't. And we're very interesting and mysterious. Our bodies are interesting and mysterious. And they're unfathomable to men. And they come from us, and they can't procreate without us. And this struggle of men to try to have some control over paternity. Remember, they didn't used to know whose baby was whose, locking the women up so they can tell in their harems, so they can tell who the father is. And the other thing is that, women used to be the producers of a lot of the food in many cultures. And a friend of mine, when I was a grad student at Berkeley, there was a first women's anthropology group. Some of the women who started studying women in anthropology. This is ages ago. And one of them, I would go to their meetings, and one of the women said, this African group I've been studying, if a man is nasty to his wife, nobody will feed him. He goes hungry because all the women get together and then they say, no, go away. You don't get anything until he settles down. So I'm thinking about all this power that we primally have reproductively and traditionally, and our connection to the earth. And in the US, we have lost that aspect of the feminine, of the sacred connection to the earth, and the conquering peoples like the Greeks tried to destroy it in the cultures that they conquered. And I think we're still dealing with thousands of years of repercussions of that. And facing a huge backlash of men. This abortion thing, it isn't about really about protecting unborn babies. It's about dominating women, in my opinion. And I think this fight that we're going to have, we're only going to win it if men and women join together to fight it. If fathers and sons and brothers are right there with us on the front lines saying no, no, no. So those are my comments for tonight. So thank you.
Diane, I'd like to follow up on what you're saying, that to me, the essence of real connective power is this relational emphasis that goes to the heart and core of the feminine. And the patriarchy, the male point of view, seems to be in the belief system that if it separates with enough emphasis and power and technology or what have you, even language, is the way that we can marginalize anybody who disagrees with us. And whether it's an ideological marginalization, or whether it's a gender marginalization, or whether it's a race, or whatever it happens to be, the healing takes place when we form relationships. We don't hurt that which we are related to. When we form a relationship, the broader the sense of the relationship, whether it's to another person or to a group or to a country or to the cosmos, we don't do damage to something that we feel a part of. And that thing that we feel a part of extends to everybody, because when we heal ourselves in that, we heal the cosmos, we heal the country. One act at a time, one movement at a time. So you're right, this whole thing has to come down to a screeching halt. But it's like a cauldron. Somebody turns up the heat and the lobsters start to crawl out. They turn the heat down, they start to proliferate and feel it's safe. And so this cauldron is what we're living in. And somebody else, we're giving control to somebody else to turn up the heat or turn it down. But we're all in this together. And this thing that we call life and existence is going to go up in smoke like the fire and the ice and the ash if we're not careful, because we have the capacity to destroy the thing that we don't feel connected with.
Really quickly, I want to check in with Maureen. I know, Maureen, you'd mentioned that you might have to leave us at 6:30. Are you? And if you do, I wanted to make sure you had a chance to say farewell.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Will. Thank you. I was thinking about the heroine's journey when we were just talking, that one of the latter stages of the heroine's journey is healing the wounded masculine, and really identifying for ourselves what the wounded or unrelated masculine nature of ourselves is before we start projecting it on other people. So what I find in working with that particular monomyth and that stage is that so many men in the culture right now are developing empathy for themselves as well as for each other. So I see that as a very positive turning. I wanted to bring in the word empathy because it's certainly not only feminine, it is masculine too, but I think that's something that we really need to teach, not only young people, but I volunteer in prison, and it's one of the things that we focus on is developing empathy for each other. So that's all I wanted to say. But thank you so much, Maria. This was an extraordinary opportunity for all of us, and I hope we can have another conversation at another time.
And maybe in person.
And maybe in person, right? Yeah. Okay, good night, everyone. Take
Thanks,
care.
Maureen.
Yeah,
Thanks, Maureen.
thank you.
Maria, we've been swirling a lot of thoughts around you. What are you thinking? What's on your mind now?
Oh, well, I was just reflecting on the whole question of solidarity, conflict versus solidarity, hostility, solidarity. Derek, you talked about a kind of generational conflicts. Diane, you've written, well, Arachne and Athena. What do you make of that? Two women who are fighting it out. How do we heal those or how do we move from conflict to solidarity? Even though, we have to remember there are going to be differences. There are going to be matters on which reasonable people can disagree. And, how do we navigate a path forward without letting those conflicts turn into armed battles or,
I think that when you talk about your heroines who go for justice, and justice, fighting for things like getting rid of gerrymandering, giving everyone a vote, those things, I think maybe we can agree on and disagree. But right now, our culture, because of its fear, because of the fear of a minority, Hillary won the popular vote. There's a fear of a minority that is taking control of our country. And maybe there are enough of us who can fight for justice, as you bring up, and men and women, and every other version of people.
There's a quote of Campbell's that you point to, Maria, where he uses the word "our," and you go on, you're like, this just kind of says it all, is that the fact that he's framing the masculine stuff he's talking about is "our," and he says, this feminine stuff, great, but it's related to us. And then you realize that he has not crossed the horizon where he actually is identifying with the feminine at all. He's completely unidentified with it. And I think that that's one of the things that for me is a big part of the answer to that question, which is like, he still talk. The funny thing about the hero's journey in so many examples, especially the Grail quest, is one of the dimensions is a quest from hypermasculinity into the integration of that which you've left out of yourself, which for a hypermasculine person is the feminine. So it's a journey to integrate the feminine. And I think he knew that, and he talks about it. However, when he answered the question that way, he was not halfway through his own journey. He was not yet identifying with the feminine in any way. He didn't have a feminine eye. And I think that for me, the most meaningful thing to me has actually been to start to recognize that I have an inner little girl that I have to care about and take care of. And it's from coming to actually identify with her that that I feel like I've started to begin to hopefully open a second eye, so that instead of seeing it always as other, to get to that solidarity, I guess maybe we have to cross that line of otherness just a little bit. And I think it sounds to me like Campbell was not over that horizon when he was answering that way.
No, and how could he have been? If you think about it, the cultural circumstances of the time. Remember, the second sex was 1949 also. And if you think, I remember growing up and reading The Feminine Mystique. I mean, I was a crazy reader, as I mentioned, and I don't know how I got my hands on that, but I recall thinking how strange this is. what a strange book, because, you know, it just shattered all these ideas about what women were supposed to do. You know, she shatters the myth of the housewife heroine. She actually calls it that. So, you know, if you think about the time and place, it would be almost impossible to think your way out of that particular box. And I loved, I don't know who it was who mentioned, you know, Campbell just doing, oh, it was Maureen, I think, who said, you know, he did this feminine thing. He quit school. I love that he quit graduate school because they were trying to box him in. And he just went and he read and, you know, processed everything that was in those books. And yes, you know, one would have hoped that he would have discovered things there that he did not see in real life. But I just give him a lot of credit for being able to evolve. And as I said, near the end of his life, to be able to see, yes, you know, it can be different. Something is happening. There's something there that I did not see, that I did not recognize.
You're referencing a quote that you put in here. I'll just read for us all, I think. It's the beginning of your epilogue. All I can tell you about, this is Campbell, all I can tell you about mythology is what men have said and have experienced, and now women have to tell us from their point of view what the possibilities of the feminine future are. And if it is, and it is a future, it's as though the liftoff has taken place. It really has. There's no doubt about it.
Right.
Yeah. And, you know, teaching him for so many years, the feeling I always had was that he knew that what he had written was incomplete. And he really looked to us to complete it. And then, you know, the last, and I don't know where he has that beautiful photograph of the Earth from the moon. And he said, this is the image of the new myth. It's the Earth herself. It's the planet. And if we're going to really continue this mythological journey, it's got to be global. So I always loved that about him, in that kind of lyric disposition that he had as an Irish bard, to look, here we're looking at the Earth from the moon, from the place of the feminine. I mean, it's just a really rich conjunction. Yeah.
And I think also, I just want to add to that, the fact that he was thinking globally before anybody else was. I mean,
Exactly.
at universities, everything was, you know, one of the reasons he quit graduate school was that they wanted to, was he in an English department or?
Yeah, at Columbia. No, you're right. You're right.
And they didn't want him to learn all these languages, but you tell the rest of the story.
Well, he was, here's Joe kicking against the patriarchy. Because the old farts there at Columbia said, you know, you come back and fit into that slot that we have for you. And he said, hell no. I mean, I just really admired him for fighting that rigid patriarchy that universities can get caught in, so can corporations and so forth. But he just kicked back at it. And so he was a wonderful rebel for how to disengage from a patriarchal system that is that champions fixity. Let's get people fixed in place and then they're safe. And he said, I'll have none of it.
And I could have gone to no other graduate program except for the one that followed after those decisions.
Can you say something too about his relationship to the draft? Because I think that's a fascinating part of his life. That is, he originally wanted to be a conscientious objector.
Yes. And I don't know much about that relationship. You will?
Only from Maria's book, to be honest.
Okay.
Whose research I really appreciate. But I think about that part of the Bhagavad Gita all the time. It's an important thing, I think, for anybody who's, you know, wrestling with that part of yourself that wants to be a warrior and do the thing, but also that just feels like it's all garbage and you don't want to do it at all.
Oh, and remember as a child, he read Native American mythology, and he
Yes.
grew to just really resent and be in a rage. I want to use that, be outraged and in a rage about how Native Americans had been treated and how the British had treated their colonies, those living in the colonies. It turns out he was too old to be drafted. He missed the draft by a year, so he didn't have to go through the process of trying to figure out whether he would be a conscientious objector or go ahead and, give in. Because there's a culture that is saying, if you want to be a man, you have to go off to war and fight these battles.
I remember when his father, I believe, took him to Madison Square Garden to see, I'm forgetting the famous cowboy at the time, but it was Cowboys and Indians, and just a pageantry. And Joe said, I didn't care about the cowboys. The Indians were the ones that I found so fascinating and so interesting. So he was always, not always, but often just pushing against the grain of what he should be or should be interested in. And I love that about him.
Right.
There's something about the intersection of the association of femininity with the earth and with nature and the Native American interest in nature. And I wonder if, reclamation and reintegration of lost and marginalized elements from both might be, the only kind of stuff that can save us now. I tend to believe that the wasteland we live in is defined by the vitality that it's repressing. And I tend to think that the only solution to our problems is by integrating what we're repressing.
So is the answer to be a bigger, better, more masculine warrior, or to redefine what being a warrior is in, I'll say, trickster terms or some relational quality? Because it seems to me that we're often taking an old paradigm and just simply shifting it into a new wardrobe. And it's just a matter of time before the old paradigm figures out what has happened to it and it rears its head because the new paradigm has been defined in relation to it. So it seems incumbent upon us to redefine what it is in relational terms and make it so attractive that people who believe in the powers of separation aren't attracted to separation.
I love your emphasis on relational, because to me, so much of it is about conversation, connection, empathy. Through empathy, we've talked about empathy, and that, the storytelling element. This is what I emphasize, so much in my book. That is, once you tell your story, you communicate your story, or you listen to somebody else's story, that capacity for connection is fired up. It can happen then. So I don't, I hate to think of it, there's no secret sauce and there's no silver bullet or, none of these magical solutions. But the hope is that, we, with the new emphasis on empathy, for example, and I hope also on curiosity and care and compassion and all of these things which are traditionally seen as feminine virtues. I can quote Campbell, the times they are changing, there's something in the air. When I first moved into the house that I'm living in, you never saw a man pushing a baby carriage. Now, I would say most of the time it's a guy who's pushing the baby carriage or taking the kids to school. So, so something is clearly happening.
There's a passage in your book I keep thinking about along these lines, and I was wondering if we get a chance to bring it up. You say that the understanding of heroism is through attentive care an effect that is triggered by openness to the world, followed by curiosity and concern about those who inhabit it. Lack of curiosity becomes then the greatest sin, a failure to acknowledge the presence of others and to care about the circumstances and conditions of their lives. And as I read it, I know that you're talking about something that you're going to go in the direction of talking about this is a heroine, heroine-like stuff. And I'm reading it and I'm thinking, this is also like the number one complaint of dads and boyfriends is, not caring enough to ask the question and be curious, not being attentive and caring. So I just hear, and then I think it was mentioned earlier that we've got to find a way to, it's as much about healing men's hearts as it is about paving a way for the heroine. And I just couldn't skip the opportunity to bring this up. To me, it's really, really an amazing line. And I just keep thinking, gosh, I mentioned the fact that I've been integrating some of my own feminine. It's been an important theme for me in the last couple of years of my life. And it's been like the most rewarding ever. It's like, I feel like a better person having actually paid attentive care to my own inner femininity.
I love that you brought that up because it's a passage in Lolita, Nabokov's Lolita, where Humbert is turned into a monster of incuriosity. Because that becomes the greatest sin, the lack of curiosity. And that's where we get back to care and attention and inquisitiveness, really wanting to know what's going on in the head of the other person.
Yeah. Just to mention Clay Boykin, who many of us know, he lives in Austin, about 50 miles from where we live. And he and I have become good friends over the last couple of years. But he's had a men's group on Monday nights in this program that he calls In Search of the Compassionate Male. And 25 or 30 men come together and they're struggling. They're struggling about how can I be masculine and be compassionate, because they're caught in that rigid stereotype of what a man can and cannot feel.
And he's a veteran, isn't he?
And he's a veteran. He's a Marine veteran. Yeah. So there's little sprigs of things popping up that are, I think, trying to become a critical mass so that they really affect the myth that we're in for all the reasons that have been brought up by all of these wonderful ideas tonight.
I think one of the things that is important in this is to bring the idea of service in. And so as we are people in our world, who do we serve? What ideals do we serve? What do we tend? Those sorts of questions and virtues open up and they stop the path of doing violence to one another. You don't, again, I go back to, hurting something that we are not a part of. And you don't hurt that which you feel a part of. You bring it in, you draw it in and make it your own. It's friendships, it's love, it's all of the things to me that bring a spirited community together and seek a solution. I'm gonna let it go right there. That's my clarion call. So anyway, go on.
Yeah, please, Maria.
No, I was just wondering if that was the signal.
No, we have a minute, and we should all sneak in our last points. And why don't we give you a last chance, very, very last of all of us, Maria. Diane, Dara, Dennis, some closing thoughts in our final minutes.
I love what you say on page 39, talking about listening to stories, where you write, to interrogate old stories is to see them now as they were then. I just love that double vision where maybe a moment of compassion enters there to see them now as they were then, and have that feeling of relationship that Dana's bringing up. I mean, it's like Ursula Le Guin. I changed the perspective. That's all I did, and then the whole world changed.
Yeah, that is so powerful, because as you were speaking, I just thought about how we read when we're young. And that's exactly it, that you want to know what they were thinking in that time and place. Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, Diane,
I'll
or
just,
Dara, please.
okay, that's fine. I'll just conclude with, there are so many things going on right now that really do feel apocalyptic and obviously need our attention and our care. But Maria, you keep, referencing the story, and one of my favorite quotes regarding story is that everything will be okay in the end, and if it's not okay, it's not the end. And I think we have to remember that our challenges are in front of us right now, and it's how we rise to our challenges that creates the quality of who we are and the quality of our lives. Again, liberation, none of this is a gift. It is all something that in our own manner, in our own way, we need to address, and we need to be conscious for and present for. And that's how the story changes. And I think we are far from the end right now. I think in so many ways, what is occurring is a gigantic opportunity. And I hope that we can transform it to that. So we'll be okay in the end, I think.
Diane, please.
It's just been such a wonderful, I just have appreciated everybody so much. This has been a fabulous experience, and thank you so much. And thank you for your important book.
Thank you. Thanks.
And if I can add a couple of final thoughts, and I'll try not to pack them all in. But for me, there are just a couple of things that I wish we would have gotten to. So I'll just say the things I wish we could have, found time for. And one is that I think that a lot of your book is in some ways a response to heroines within a patriarchal situation. And I'd be so interested to take this conversation beyond that and go maybe look at some heroines that are pre-patriarch, or at least before some of the power struggle, when like Inanna and Isis and even Demeter in that kind of, power struggle zone, when you see, heroines not necessarily being the silenced ones, but they're the ones that are on the quest themselves. And I think that could be fun, is another place to go. And the other thing I want to mention that's just super on my mind is we're talking about the silencing. You've been talking about the silencing of the feminine. And you remember when we were doing my dissertation together, one of the things I was focusing on was the atom itself and matter. And so the word mater for mother, right? And matter itself has been silenced. We have seen matter as dead and inert. And the silencing of matter has become a silencing of femininity. And now we're looking at, this is the whole thing I did on the movie Alien with that documentary Memory, was looking at how the alien, and you talk about the Furies, when the feminine is silenced, then the Furies might be seeking justice. And his whole take on that movie Alien was, we've so silenced the feminine that, and it's this hypermasculine crew and all that stuff, that it brings forth the Furies. They go all the way out there where they expect matter to be dead so they can extract it. And there they scratch a little piece of matter and it's not dead. It's a boogie monster. It is the feminine. It is the Fury. And it's trying to tell us that this matter we've been seeing is dead all along. We've been treating as silent, as everything from Einstein to the quantum mechanics have shown us that we can't reduce matter to dead, inert stuff anymore. And nor should we be reducing the feminine to dead, inert reality. And then you talk about art and speaking through art. And there I see the living, speaking matter in the art. And that's just been super exciting and inspiring to me. So million things I wish we could talk about, but I couldn't help but sneak that in. And also just to say thank you, Maria, for this incredible panel, for this incredible book, incredible presentation, and for all the generosity that you've shown me over the years. Thank you, Maria.
Oh, thank you. And let's remember what Pandora left for us. Hope.
Hope.
Hope for a happily ever after.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and hope. Don't we feel gratitude for one another? And isn't that part of what we hope goes forward? You know, humility, connecting to the earth, connecting with one another. I go back to the relational. You know, it's if we listen to what is around us, the clues are obvious. And so, Maria, I remember when we had lunch after the last one out in Malibu, and it just really meant a lot to me that there are educators like yourself doing the good work, and like Dennis. I mean, it's just, we learn, and I'm so grateful that I am able to experience the wisdom and joy and knowledge and the passion that you all have. So, and Diane and Dara, I just so treasure our friendship, you know. And Diane, I look forward to seeing you next month, you know, when you're out here. What a joy. Okay, let's go out with a singing bowl, please. Thank you, everyone, for a very rich and stimulating evening. You all got to meet my wonderful dog, Otis. Odysseus is his name. And he's on a journey, as we all are. Thank you very much, Maria, Dara, Dennis, Diane, and thank you, Maureen. See you on tape.
Yes. Beautiful.
Everybody.
Thank you
Thank
all.
you.
What a treasure. What a treasure.
Thank you again. And again and again and again.
And again. All right. Bye, Dara.
Hi. See you in Santa Cruz.
You bet.